Everyone, it's Nate with Outside Cleaners here on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this video is about how to ruin cedar siding. Might sound strange, but bear with me. If you own a cedar sided home in the area, you probably have stood back at some point and wondered, how do you keep that cedar siding looking as good as you can for as long as you can? There's ways to do it, and I'll talk more about that in the following videos, but there are ways to screw it right up. There's ways to kill cedar siding. And in my opinion, based on experience, if you can avoid these most common mistakes, then you will be well on your way towards helping your cedar siding look as good as it can for as long as it can. Okay? So I made a list. This is rather a reverse order, sort of a countdown. These are things that I see all the time, and I have for years and years now. So these are real. Consider how these apply to your own cedar home. Starting at the top, how to kill cedar siding. First, smother it with bushes, trees, and vines. So in other words, like landscaping and vegetation. I've said it many times, cedar siding is great stuff. However, it needs to breathe. And by that, I mean it needs to be able to dry out between periods of moisture. If you cover that cedar siding with a climbing vine or smother it with hydrangeas that are pressing up against the siding, your cedar sided house isn't going to be able to dry out properly between periods of rain. And that's going to, at a minimum, promote immense amounts of algae and mold growth. And at a maximum, that cedar siding is going to start to rot long before it should. So my rule of thumb is keep enough space between your cedar siding and anything else so that you can walk between the house and whatever is next. You know, walk between the house and the bush or the house and the tree, whatever. You want to be able to walk all around your house unimpeded. Okay? All right, next up on how to kill your cedar siding, never clean your gutters. Ever, ever, ever. So of course what happens is the gutters get clogged. They overflow when it rains. The water, instead of going conveniently down a downspout, it'll just cascade over certain areas of siding. That siding will stay wet longer than it ever should, and that siding will start to rot long before it should. All right, next up on how to kill cedar siding. Wash the siding or have the siding washed far too late. And in this way, siding, you know, I think of it sort of like teeth. If, let's say you get to your mid-40s having never brushed your teeth or flossed or gone to the dentist, and then you know, go to have your teeth cleaned, yeah, they can get cleaner, but they're going to look like and they're going to be in really bad shape, right? So just like teeth, cedar siding can be left too long. It can get into a condition where cleaning it isn't going to help anything. It's just going to be a waste of money. And in fact, about 10% of the homes that I go to look at with an eye towards cleaning them, I tell the homeowner, I say, don't waste your money. You've waited too long. Cleaning this at this point is not going to look better. It's just going to be cleaner. And what you're going to basically see is how bad the actual condition of the cedar siding is. All right, next up, how to kill cedar siding. The opposite of the previous, which was wash too late. This one is wash too often. And this is sort of a tricky thing. You know, there is some judgment that needs to be applied. In my experience, cedar siding, if it's left bare, natural, should not be washed or need to be washed more than every 6 to 10 years. The reason being, cedar is soft and fibrous, not unlike hair or clothing. And just like those materials, it can be washed too often. In the case of cedar, you wash it too often, you strip out all the protective oils that make cedar so long lasting. And that's where I see homes that are 8 years old getting resided because they've been washed every year. Homeowners didn't really understand the dangers involved in that. The house washer was happy to just keep making it an annual thing. And suddenly you have shingles cupping, curling, cracking, dry and brittle, nails rusted to hell because of the caustic materials used to wash the siding, it's a bad scene. So every 6 to 10 years is as often as I would want my own cedar house washed. All right, and last on my list of how to ruin cedar siding, drum roll, get a bad stain or sealant job on your cedar siding. And in fact, I'm making this video later than I expected to today because I got on the phone with a guy who called from off Cape asking if I could please bail him out because he got a bad stain job, and now he's in a very expensive situation, very expensive, and no, I can't help him. So how do you get a bad stain job? Well, most often it boils down to one of two things: either improper preparation, meaning cleaning, and I've mentioned this in previous videos. Don't make the mistake or don't fall for the bait of thinking that soft washing cedar siding is prepped for staining. It is not. Soft washing is mostly a cosmetic thing. Doesn't get it functionally clean. If you have your siding cleaned, you're going to need it power washed appropriately with the appropriate chemicals and all that, but it's going to need to be deep cleaned before being stained. Secondly, I see stain jobs going bad when the stain is applied in poor weather, and that often happens, honestly, with the cheaper painting companies that, you know, it's drizzling rain and they're slapping on stain as quick as they can, just trying to get the paycheck and move on to the next one. You know, a good painter or a good painting company, it's going to charge a lot more than a bad one because they got to really work around the weather, and it's not just today's weather, it's yesterday's weather and the weather tomorrow that impacts what they're doing today. And when it comes to a bad sealant job, sealant meaning any of these cedar or wood sealant products that are being pushed on homeowners, I think those go bad at square one. Just in concept, I think it's a bad idea. I think that because of what I've seen over the years, I almost can think of no examples of cedar sealant that have gone well that I've personally seen. The idea is that some sort of, you know, invisible barrier coat will keep out the moisture and keep out the, you know, mold spores and fungus and all that stuff. The problem is that cedar is soft and porous, and given enough time, things will pass right through it, okay? So when you're sealing it, all you're really doing is sealing the outside, not the inside, not the under or the back side of the shingle or the clapboard. So I am strongly against sealing cedar siding. I own a cedar home in Brewster. I have every option at my disposal to keep it clean and looking good, and I do not seal it. So that's my list on how to kill cedar siding. I do hope you found it informative and useful. Really, if you can avoid these most common mistakes, you really, really are well on your way to keeping that siding looking as good as you can for as long as you can. Bye for now.